Hi, welcome to Biographics. My name is Shannon, and today we're going to learn about John Wayne. John Wayne, America's favorite cowboy, written by Ben Adelman. The 20th century gave birth to a new kind of celebrity, the movie star. Motion pictures had the portability of books combined with the visual spectacle of artwork and the performance acumen of theater productions, making the stars of this new medium the first celebrities with a truly global impact. And for a long period of time, no movie star had a bigger impact than John Wayne. For over 30 years, John Wayne was one of Hollywood's highest-grossing actors. He specialized in westerns, playing a cowboy so well he practically came to define the genre. But his cultural impact went far beyond the silver screen. For many people, John Wayne was the physical embodiment of America itself. The traits he portrayed in his films, such as rugged individualism, self-reliance, toughness, cool thinking under pressure, were all seen as essential to the American spirit, the American character. When Nikita Khrushchev came to the United States, he wanted to do two things: visit Disneyland and meet John Wayne.
You can call me a dirty son of a bitch, but if you ever call me daddy again, I'll finish this fight.
What many people didn't know, however, was that many of the things that made John Wayne weren't natural. They were the result of a carefully orchestrated public relations strategy, initially done by the movie studios he worked for, and then largely propagated by Wayne himself. John Wayne wasn't a person, he was a persona, invented and shaped by the man who played him. He was exceptionally image conscious. He would only play roles that he felt John Wayne would be suited for, and would be very particular about scripts and camera work to make sure that he was portrayed in a way that matched his audience's perception of him. The result was an almost cult-like following among his fans, who even decades after his death continue to make him one of Hollywood's most popular actors. Marion Morrison was born on May 26, 1907 in Winterset, Iowa, a small farm town 35 miles southwest of Des Moines. His parents, Clyde and Mary, were not happily married. Clyde was well-liked but failed at every job or business opportunity he ever tried, while Mary was a cold woman with a fearsome temper and a perpetually expanding grievance list. She openly doted on Marion's younger brother Robert, which caused the older son to gravitate to his father. It came as little surprise when the Morrison marriage finally fell apart in 1921 and Marion went to live with his father while Bob stayed with their mother. When Marion was 7, the family moved from Iowa to Southern California, ending up in Glendale, a stone's throw away from the growing city of Los Angeles. As you can imagine, young Marion was not a fan of his first name. Neighborhood kids made fun of him, asking why he had a girl's name and why his mother didn't dress him in skirts. The guys at the local firehouse ended up christening him with the nickname he kept the rest of his life. The Morrison family dog, an Airedale Terrier who liked to chase the fire engines, was named Big Duke, and because the boy could always be found running after the dog, he became Little Duke, eventually shortened to just Duke. So Duke Morrison was very popular in high school. Tall, good-looking, and a star player on the football team, you would never know about his troubled home life just by looking at him. He was always in motion, always doing something, working any number of small-time jobs to raise money to support his family, playing not only football, but any sport that presented itself, an active member of the YMCA, the Boy Scouts. He wrote for the school newspaper and even appeared in school plays, although apparently he suffered from a crippling case of stage fright at the time. I guess he got over it. Morrison was also good academically, more than qualifying for a football scholarship at the University of Southern California, or USC. Once again, he was popular. He joined the Sigma Chi fraternity. But just like in high school, money was a constant source of vexation, and his scholarship only covered tuition and one meal a day on weekdays. Fortunately, the USC coach Howard Jones had some friends in one of LA's fastest growing industries, movie making. And the rest, as they say, is history. Morrison began working as a prop boy for Fox while still at USC. His first film roles were as an uncredited extra in assorted silent films produced on the Fox lot in the latter half of the 1920s. It was there he met John Ford, who was already well established as a successful film director, and the two became friends. It was the beginning of one of the most productive relationships in Hollywood history. At the beginning of his junior year, Duke hurt his shoulder, probably the result of an accident sustained while body surfing, which is, for the uninitiated, surfing on a wave without a surfboard. The body. He lost his spot on the team and thus his scholarship, leaving him unable to pay for school. Morrison decided he didn't really want to be a lawyer anyway and dropped out of college to work at Fox and other film studios full-time. By 1930, Morrison was John Ford's favorite prop man, marked by his willingness to do pretty much anything the film production required. But it was another director, Raoul Walsh, who would give the Duke his big break. He was getting ready to make a movie called The Big Trail, a Western epic about a pioneer wagon trail heading west on the Oregon Trail. For the lead role, caravan scout Breck Coleman, Walsh didn't want an established film star. He wanted what he called an authentic Western personality, someone who the audience would believe could actually lead a group of settlers to California. Walsh found the man he was looking for in the 6'4" tall Morrison, who was lugging props around the Fox lot. The studio bigwigs at Fox decided that Marion Morrison was not a proper name for a movie star, so they decided to rechristen him with a stage name, a common practice of the time. Walsh suggested naming him after Revolutionary War General Mad Anthony Wayne, of whom the director was an admirer. But Winfield Sheehan, Fox's head of production, nixed the first name as being too Italian, settling on John instead. Their new star didn't care what he was called, he was just happy to be there, as the saying goes. The Big Trail was a monumental production stretching across locations in 7 states and involving thousands of people, animals, and 185 Conestoga wagons. Unfortunately for Fox, and for John Wayne, the film was also a monumental flop. Fox lost over $1 million, nearly $20 million in today's money, a catastrophe which nearly bankrupted the studio. Fox only survived by merging with 20th Century Studios to form 20th Century Fox in 1935. John Wayne couldn't be blamed for most of the problems which caused the financial disaster, which was mostly caused by cost overruns and the onset of the Great Depression. But as far as Fox was concerned, John Wayne was box office poison. It seemed like his film career was over before it began. Thus banished from the major studios, John Wayne found himself on Poverty Row, a slang term for the many small, independent movie studios that eked out a living producing films with considerably smaller budgets and were thus of much lower quality than the big boys. Wayne spent most of the 1930s starring in dozens of low-budget films, usually B-movies, so named because they were the second film on a reel shown during double features, following after a more established A movie. It was hard, exhausting work, and the pay was poor, but it was work, which is more than what many people could say during the Depression. After all, Wayne had a family to support. He had married Josephine Senez in 1933, and the couple had 4 children. The one thing Wayne had going for him at this low point in his career was his continued relationship with John Ford, who he not only regarded as a friend, but also a mentor, a surrogate father figure. All his life, Wayne referred to Ford as Coach or Pappy. Ford, in turn, jokingly called Wayne Old Meathead, but the affection went both ways. All throughout the 1930s, Wayne continually badgered Ford about doing a movie with him, but Ford always responded that he was waiting for the right part to cast his young protege. That part finally came in 1939 when Ford directed Stagecoach, a western about a harrowing stagecoach journey through hostile Apache country. Wayne stars as the Ringo Kid, an outlaw with a heart of gold. Ford was not a fun director to work under. He had a reputation of being a tyrant on the set, routinely yelling and insulting his leading man to push him to be better when the cameras were rolling. Wayne responded like a son trying desperately to please his father. Not a conventional relationship between director and actor, perhaps, but it worked for them. Stagecoach was both a critical and commercial success, with high praise in particular for both Ford's elegant shot framing, the spectacular location shots of Monument Valley in the northeastern parts of Arizona, and for the performance turned in by John Wayne. To this day, the film is considered one of the best Western movies ever made, and it showed Hollywood that Wayne could be a star. By 1942, John Wayne was one of Hollywood's hottest commodities. In less than 3 years, he'd gone from making uninspired, low-budget films that took a week to make to headlining a movie directed by famed auteur Cecil DeMille. He co-starred in 3 films with Marlene Dietrich, one of Hollywood's most sought-after leading ladies. Their on-screen chemistry was driven, at least in part, by the very real off-screen affair they were having. It wasn't the first time Wayne had stepped out on his wife, Josie, but she made sure the affair with Dietrich was the last. The couple divorced in 1945. The period from 1948 to 1959 was John Wayne's personal golden age. He'd made good movies before and would make good movies after, but this decade saw him firmly established as one of the film industry's top box office draws. The run began with 1948's Red River, in which John Wayne plays an uncompromising cattle rancher, Tom Dunson, and ends with 1959's Rio Bravo, where he plays a Western sheriff. Wayne could and did play other characters, an American boxer in Ireland in The Quiet Man, a German merchant sailor in The Sea Chase, and even Genghis Khan in The Conqueror. But it was starring in westerns that made Wayne a legend, what made him a cultural icon that transcended the movie screen. A common critique of Wayne's acting is that he plays the same character in every movie. The charge is true to an extent, though not in the way that people think it is. The truth is, John Wayne never saw himself as John Wayne movie stars. To his friends and family, he was still Duke Morrison, the old football player from USC. John Wayne, on the other hand, was a screen persona, much like the real person, but in a more idealized form. John Wayne was the person Duke Morrison wanted to be. Strong, independent, go-getting man who made few mistakes and could solve most problems through sheer toughness and perseverance. When he made movies, he was envisioning how John Wayne, and not himself, would play the character he was cast as. So, method acting almost.
I'm a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude.
This persona of his was what made his movies so popular. People would go and see a bad movie simply because John Wayne was in it. His character was how America saw itself during this post-war period, how it wanted others to perceive it. Even America's enemies admired him. Joseph Stalin was a fan of his movies, and one of Nikita Khrushchev's personal highlights during his trip to America in '59 was trading shots of vodka and tequila with the actor at a Hollywood luncheon. Arguably, the best film of his career was The Searchers, the 9th of 14 collaborations with his mentor John Ford. Released in '56, the film was an immediate critical and commercial success and has been considered by many to be one of the finest westerns ever made, heading AFI's top 10 list ahead of such classics as High Noon and Shane. Wayne's character, Ethan Edwards, is obsessed with rescuing his niece Debbie from the Comanche Indians that have kidnapped her and killed the rest of his family. Although as the film goes on, spoilers, we learn that Edwards' idea of rescuing the girl is to kill her since she has been contaminated from her time living with the Comanches, heavily implying that she has been assaulted, though the movie never says so outright. It's the closest Wayne ever came in his career to portraying a bad guy, though in true Hollywood fashion, he changes his mind, saves the girl, and goes riding off into the sunset, triumphant. By 1960, John Wayne was an American legend. His influence was everywhere. Kids played with Duke-branded six-shooters and read comic books based on his films. Marlboro Cigarettes' popular mascot, the Marlboro Man, was heavily based on Wayne. And Buddy Holly's hit song, That'll Be the Day, got its title from a line repeated often by Wayne's character in The Searchers. That'll be the day when you say goodbye, yeah, that'll be the day when you make me... The way he talked, the way he walked, the way he sat on a horse, all were relentlessly imitated by his adoring fans. Behind the scenes, however, cracks were beginning to show. Wayne's second marriage to Esperanza Chata Bauer had failed in 1954 after 8 tempestuous years. Wayne, unable to be alone for long, soon after married Pilar Pellet, and the couple had 3 children, giving Wayne a total of 7. The large family having to pay multiple divorce settlements and Wayne's own expensive habits, like the annual cost of maintaining his yacht, the Wild Goose, ran up to $250,000 a year. meaning that he was constantly in need of money, which led him to make movies at a frequency which other movie stars would have balked at. This included some movies that he probably shouldn't have signed off on, like the aforementioned The Conqueror, widely considered one of the worst movies ever made. Wayne's first attempt at directing as well as acting didn't exactly help matters. The Alamo was a personal passion project for him, the result of 15 years of scheming, including establishing his own production company, the Batjack, in 1952. However, the film had cost so much to make that its success at the box office wasn't enough to recoup Wayne's personal investment. But the biggest factor that slowed him down was his health. Wayne smoked constantly, as many as 4 or 5 packs a day of unfiltered Camels, and as often does, the habit caught up with him eventually. While filming the World War II picture In Harm's Way with Kirk Douglas in 1964, he became ill with a violent hacking cough. After production wrapped, Wayne finally went to see a doctor who diagnosed him with lung cancer. Wayne underwent surgery in which his entire left lung, containing a tumor the size of a golf ball, was removed. Despite breathing difficulties that would plague him the rest of his life, Wayne was quick to get back to work. 3 months after his surgery, filming began on The Sons of Katie Elder. Wayne was in the twilight of his career, though he was still capable of turning in exceptional performances. Starring as the one-eyed, drunken Marshall Rooster Cogburn in True Grit, Wayne won the Academy Award for Best Actor in 1969, an Oscar that had eluded him his entire career. However, Wayne was increasingly becoming known for comments made off-screen rather than the ones committed to film. Wayne had long been known as one of the most conservative members of the Hollywood establishment. A virulent anti-communist, he supported blacklisting and served as the president of the Motion Picture Alliance, a Hollywood group specifically dedicated to rooting out communist influences on the film industry. That was all fine, well, and good during the 50s, but that same rhetoric did not play well a decade later, particularly not among America's younger generations. The same kids that might have grown up playing with his toys now mocked him as a cartoonish figure who was out of touch with modern America. His film, The Green Berets, specifically made to bug up support for the Vietnam War, was widely panned by both critics and veterans as being nothing like the reality of what fighting in Vietnam was like. Reporters began to ask him more questions about politics than movies, hoping he would say something poorly thought out that they could print. Playboy magazine published an interview with Wayne in 1971, which included cringeworthy quotes such as, "I believe in white supremacy until the blacks are educated to a point of responsibility," and "I don't believe we did wrong in taking this country away from the Indians. There were great numbers of people who needed new land, and the Indians were selfishly trying to keep it for themselves." Keep it for them. John. Marion, what are you doing? John Wayne was not the brain-dead imperialist dinosaur his detractors liked to paint him as. He was well-read, an avid chess player, and could get along with people from all races and political affiliations. Most everyone who worked with him or socialized with him found him charismatic and funny, even people who profoundly disagreed with his political beliefs. He even broke with conservatives when he found their views incorrect. He angered Republicans by siding with Jimmy Carter over the issue of the Panama Canal, for instance. But this interview certainly did him no favors. Even today, decades after his death, it is still cited as proof he was a racist and shouldn't have airports and schools named after him. Toward the end of his career, John Wayne began only making movies that were inside his comfort zone. That is, boilerplate westerns with him as the main hero. These had been his stock in trade for decades, and audiences had always come through. Only now they weren't. Westerns were in general falling out of fashion with the movie-going public, particularly the kind of westerns that John made. Relatively uncontroversial. The old Hays Code that dictated what Hollywood could and could not put into movies had been scrapped, and a new generation of films, more violent, sexual, and dark, were being made. Wayne's unwillingness to break out of the flawless persona he'd built up, combined with his outspoken politics, made him unpopular with anyone who wasn't already a fan of his, and fewer of those were turning up to every new release. The Shootist provides a fitting bookend to John Wayne's career, though at the time he didn't intend for it to be his last movie. Released in '76, Wayne plays an aging gunfighter dying of cancer, who challenges the three baddest men in town to one final duel to go out in a blaze of glory. No doubt that's how Wayne saw himself and would have preferred to go. The film includes a montage of scenes from earlier Wayne movies at the beginning, adding to the perception that the movie is a swan song not only for the character, but for the actor. His final years were spent living with his secretary-turned-girlfriend, Pat Stacy. He and Pilar had separated in '73, though they never got divorced. But he became sick with cancer again, this time in his stomach, probably caused by his switch to chewing tobacco after his lung surgery. And this time, there was little doctors could do. His last appearance at the 1979 Academy Awards shocked colleagues and audiences alike with how gaunt and thin he'd become. He died on June 11, 1979 at the age of 72, touching off a wave of national mourning. Politicians on both sides of the aisle honored him, with Congress awarding him their gold medal, while President Carter gave him the Medal of Freedom. Wayne was buried in Pacific View Memorial Park in Newport Beach, California. Kobe Bryant would be buried there 40 years later. For 20 years, the grave had no headstone. His children didn't want the grave to become a pilgrimage site for fans the way his childhood home in Iowa had. John Wayne's legacy continues even decades after his death. He is consistently rated among people's favorite actors, often the only one that isn't contemporary on the list. The John Wayne Airport in Orange County bears his name, as well as a 9-foot-tall equestrian statue of the Duke himself in front of the terminal. But Wayne is a much more controversial figure in death than he was while he was alive, not only because of his outspoken beliefs, but because of his use as a standard-bearer among modern conservatives. If you support their politics, you like John Wayne, and if you don't like him. But John Wayne's legacy in film is much less controversial. He has defined the Western genre ever since Stagecoach was released nearly 90 years ago, and his sheer volume of work, appearing in 169 feature films, a record that is going to be hard to break, stands for itself. Every actor to strap on a pair of chaps has been compared to him, and will likely continue to do so as long as Hollywood keeps making westerns. Well, now that we've learned about John Wayne, it's time for me to mosey on off into that sunset and hit that old dusty trail. So be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications. And I'll see you around, partner.